There's Gangle and Zooble and Kinger too. Ragatha, Jackson, and Pomni too. Day after day after day after day after day after day after day. What the hell was that? I don't know anymore. The world is just chaotic. Whatever. Welcome back, my little frozen raviolis, to the amazing StillerBros at the movies. Today we are, I swear to God, we have done Marvel movies, we've done Star Wars movies, we've done DC movies in both the extended universe and the new cinematic universe. We have done videos on movies on The Loud House and movies starring Jared Leto. But this is the first time I think that I am legitimately a little bit scared of what a fan base might do to us if they find this video and don't like what we have to say. Let's talk about the Amazing Digital Circus.
I'm in danger!
Yes. So, about 3 years ago, Glitch dropped the pilot for a new show. They had been kind of a sort of smaller indie studio out of Australia. They just started bringing on new shows with their show Murder Drones. And then eventually they found Gooseworks, a YouTube animator who they seemed to like the work of, and decided to ask, hey, do you have any ideas for shows that you might like to pitch for the 3D realm? Because Gooseworks is a 2D animator. And Glitch hadn't started doing 2D animation yet. So Gooseworks pitched an idea called the Amazing Digital Circus. And 3 years ago, that pilot came out and was a huge surprise hit that nobody saw coming. And it basically led to Glitch becoming one of the preeminent names in indie animation for YouTube. Since then, they've created everything from Knights of Guinevere with Dana Terrace, from the Gameoverse, from Robert Ross and Aaron Hansen. And it's kind of insane to think of how big they've exploded and how almost simple the business model was for them to basically create this indie animation studio with no major backing by another big studio. The thing is, however you want to slice it, Glitch is still an independent animation studio, completely self-funded through YouTube AdSense, and this is the kicker here.
Merchandising! Where the real money from the movie is made.
And through that merchandising, we have got a lot of people arguing that Glitch is not indie anymore because they'll put out a pilot and then less than a week later they will put out a video promoting merchandise, plushies, action figures, all that kind of stuff. And through that, I have to say, you ever worked on a major piece of work like an animated pilot or even a short film or anything like that? It's not cheap. No, animation is probably the kind of art form that if you don't do it by yourself, it's going to be really, really, really expensive. And that's the thing. We've got people on the internet. The Amazing Digital Circus has been a huge runaway success. But now, ever since they announced what we are going to talk about today, the internet has decided that they hate Glitch, that they hate Gooseworks, that they hate the Amazing Digital Circus, because they decided to make a big event out of what is the final episode of the Amazing Digital Circus. Yes, today, because the finale, now out in theaters under the name The Last Act, is basically Glitch making a big deal out of the series finale by putting it out in theaters as a feature-length film. And before we go any further with this, I'm going to say one thing. We are going to attempt to be as spoiler-free as possible. We are not going to go too deep into the kinds of stuff that happens in the Amazing Digital Circus from episode 1 onwards. But just to be safe, if you are at all even a little interested in the Amazing Digital Circus, like you've heard people talking about it, you've been like seeing the toys pile up at Targets and Walmarts all over the country, and you just are like, what is this thing? There is a playlist with every single available episode right there. Depending on when you're watching this, it might even include the final episode that we are going to talk about in this video. Go watch it, and if you are at all still interested, come back here. I swear we will be waiting for you. And on another note, if you are part of the people who saw the leak of this movie... Guys, it was gonna be free in 2 weeks anyway. You didn't have to be angry about it, especially since everyone who's going to see it, as far as their social media posters seem to say, they're gonna be cool about it. But just in that case, is if you are in the comments section posting spoilers for at least the first 2 weeks after this video goes out, your comments will be deleted and you will be blocked because we are not tolerating that crap. Yeah. The thing is, look, the internet is a beautiful place. It has allowed many people of niche interests to find each other and be able to have long, incredible conversations. In some cases, people have fallen in love on the internet from their niche interests. But the problem is that for every niche interest, there's also a huge anti-fandom built up throughout the internet.
I don't feel safe.
If there's something that people love, people are eventually going to pile on and hate it. And to the people who do that, to the people who go out there, look at things that they at one point claimed to love, whether you be a right-wing weirdo who's looking for any excuse to get angry because there's like a black person in the background or a woman who has agency in the story or anything like that, or if you're one of those people who just hates anything that's popular, hates the fact that Disney is allowed to exist and make whatever they want, so that corporations do stuff, that even indie distributors are like, okay, we need to get money to somehow pay the people who make our stuff, so we're gonna like sell merchandise and maybe at the end of our videos ask, hey, could you drop a couple coins in the Patreon bucket so that we can eat this month? To both those camps, who are both so annoying, are you tired? Like, are you exhausted by the fact that you live like this? Because I'm exhausted and I'm just looking at it from the outside. Yeah? I look at stuff like this and I'm like, hooray, a distraction from the fact that everything in the world is terrible right now, and you want to make it worse. Why do you do this? I'm just so exhausted by the fact that I have to be exhausted on your behalf. So with those rants out of the way, let's get into being positive about this. The Amazing Digital Circus is a really, really good show. It's kind of a slow burn. It was something that took me a minute personally to get into. But there's also the fact that as a show, the Amazing Digital Circus and almost everything that Glitch has made fills a niche that most mainstream animation studios do not feel the need to fill, and that is young adults animation. That's a big thing, is that we have kids and we have adults. There are older kids animations, like you can have preschool animation, like something like Paw Patrol or something like that. You can have older kids animation, like the Owl House or Amphibia and stuff like that. But then there's just like this huge dip, where if you're an animation fan who thinks they're too old for the ages 6 to 11 TV shows and movies, but you're too young to watch South Park and Rick and Morty, you are kind of in a no man's land. And the fact is that Glitch makes almost TV quality animation for that age group. Occasionally that age group would get an animated show like Infinity Train or Kipo and the Age of the Wonder Beasts, but stuff like that is few and far between, because as far as most major studios are concerned, animation is either kid stuff or it's so that adult jokes can be like way more adult, because the joke suddenly goes from that cartoon character is doing something completely ridiculous that no human could do, to that cartoon character is swearing and farting and beating people to a bloody pulp. And Glitch is an animation studio that allows for more adult, darker humor. Swears are occasional, but the important thing is that these are shows about younger people who are also dealing with kind of problems that older teenagers and younger adults can deal with. That people who don't think that every cartoon should be somewhere between Bluey and Family Guy.
Also, they're kind of violent.
Yeah, occasionally there will be violence. But the Amazing Digital Circus is kind of unique from most modern day shows, because what other shows can you think of that in a 20-minute episode will go from ridiculous cartoony slapstick to surrealist horror to characters therapy talking back and forth.
There's a lot of existentialism in this, and it's an insane show that we're watching, and we're getting these hints of existentialism and sort of mental crises and stuff.
So for those who are not in the know, the show's basically about a group of people, as far as we know, who are kind of trapped in what at first seems like a virtual reality video game that leaves them in weird, different character creations that they're kind of stuck in, like a purple bunny, a little jester, a chess piece. But through it all, they are kind of stuck also going on these random adventures as they're trying to live in a gigantic circus tent run by a benevolent AI who is just desperate for validation.
And really, this premise could, if on a TV show, normally, they would probably have a lot of what a lot of people call filler episodes, but here,
because the show is only limited to 9 episodes.
Because it's an indie show.
Which adds up to about 10.5 hours, because the final episode has been confirmed to be an hour. The way that they're making this feature length is that they're attaching the last episode to be released, episode 8, to the front of this.
Yeah, but it's become kind of an event in the sense that it's a big deal, and there's a couple series finales that have had releases in theaters this year, with the fact that Stranger Things had their finale at the beginning of the year released, and then The Boys went and released their finale in 4DX.
Which, I don't know how you made that 4DX. Did, the blood shoot out at people in the theater seats? What's going on there?
Don't know.
But the other thing to talk about is the fact that series finales are really, really hard to get right.
Yeah.
It's kind of a well-known fact that there's only a handful of great series finales, and it's at least partially due to the fact that endings are difficult.
Just look at the 2 shows I mentioned with The Boys and Stranger Things, both of which have the internet not really gelling with where those finales ended.
Whether you're satisfied with the way they ended, or you think that they are abominations that completely ruined the entire ride for you, that you may never rewatch them, it's really up in the air. And like I said, there's very few series finales that I would probably call perfect. But the important thing is that series finales are hard, no matter what. And no matter what, they had to know on some level that they're walking into a very difficult, hard-to-win situation to make everybody happy.
It's not even like it's the first show that they've had end. Murder Drones had its finale about 1.5 years ago, and they've had to deal with that, and for the most part, the fans were pretty happy with where it ended.
Though the difference is that Murder Drones didn't make an event out of its ending as much as this is making an event out of this ending. Because Glitch is releasing it in theaters, a bunch of people are really, really angry about it, mostly because a bunch of people don't like 2 things about it. One, they have to pay to go see it in theaters, which, understandable. When you've been getting this thing for free on YouTube for 3 years, suddenly putting it behind a paywall in any conceivable way is the kind of thing that would make people angry. Especially in cases like this that kind of feel more like test cases to see just what Glitch can do with a future distribution model. Then there's the fact that it's 2 weeks out from the official release on YouTube and Netflix.
So people are a little upset that there's people that can pay and they will go see it and potentially post spoilers online, which again, no spoilers here. There's not going to be any spoilers here.
Look, we are not going to spoil anything. We know for a fact that there's at least a bunch of really talented Amazing Digital Circus fan artists who have said, I'm going to see it, I'm not going to post any spoilers. Anything I post for the next 2 weeks is basically going to be spoiler-free stuff that I already put together in advance of this. But the important thing is that we need to make sure that these people are at least satiated, because it's like, if you don't want to go, if you can't afford to go, if you don't want the communal experience of going to see this show in theaters, then we kind of need to at least meet them halfway. Then there's the other fact that at first this was a slow rollout of theaters. Originally this was going to be a limited screening, but Glitch,
They always wanted to expand, and they had plenty of plans to expand.
when they explicitly announced they were going to do this, they specifically said, we are going to do this.
We're going to do whatever we can to make sure as many people as possible can see this in a theater.
So for months now, they have been going with, hey, we're going to work to put it in this country. We're going to work to put it in this country. And eventually, a bunch of countries have opened. Not every country that they can get into, but as many as they could try to.
They also expanded the one weekend that limited engagement to 2 weeks, ending on the 18th, just before the final episode drops on YouTube and Netflix.
And through it all, even though we have now basically explained everything away, been like, hey, this fan base is passionate, but meanwhile the anti-fandom is out there just being like, they are a minority. They are a loud minority, but they are the minority. I'm trying not to paint the entire fandom with this broad brush, like we try to every single time we talk about fandoms like this. Like the Star Wars fandom, like the Marvel post-Endgame fandom, like the DC fandom.
Like the Rick and Morty fandom, like the Loud House fandom.
There are so many people on the internet who are incredibly passionate, but a few bad actors in the fandom who are incredibly passionate, but are also very passionate in the wrong ways, leaves us just kind of in a spiral, because it's like, hey, we'd like this entire thing to kind of work out for everybody. We'd like everyone to be happy. But the problem is that there's a lot of people who don't want a bunch of people to be happy.
And it's just kind of sad, really, because we were really excited about going to see this movie. Like, a month ago, we were ready to have a completely different version of this video up and ready to go, where we just get to gush about this thing that we actually really like.
But now we've got leakers making it difficult to dodge the movie's release. We've got people who are going around and acting as though Glitch is the worst thing in the world. We've got controversies that are so numerous that I can't tell the fake ones from the real ones anymore, because some of them are just basically people overreacting to stuff that happened years ago that they've already addressed and asked. And then there's the people acting like Glitch isn't doing the actually best thing they can do, like getting out ahead of leaks and being like, hey, please don't do this, and we're just trying to make the product as good as we can for you people.
But all in all, we're still excited to see this movie. We're still excited to see fans who live near us and to hang out. This is our first Fathom event, for God's sake.
It's probably going to be full of cosplayers and people who react very vocally to every little twist and turn that comes into this final event.
And, we're probably going to be right there with them, because, again, we love this show and we want to see it succeed.
And if it kind of ends with a flop, or ends in just kind of a it was fine kind of way or anything like that, then whatever, we've got to be a part of this event. But if not, then, and it turns out that this was actually a really solid ending, well, what else can we say?
Well,
yeah, that's about it.
Yep.
We've gone on for a long time. If this ends up being the longest episode, I wouldn't be shocked. See you after the jump. Also, it's kind of funny that the theater where we're going to see the last act is right next to a VR place that used to be a Hot Topic. Things are weird sometimes. Okay, we're out, and we can't talk about that at all.
Nope. This is probably going to be the short part of the video, guys.
This might actually not end up being the longest video we've ever put out, but the important thing is that we're out, we saw it, and if you know what you're getting into. If you are a fan of the Amazing Digital Circus, you like the characters, you like it, I think you're going to be pretty satisfied with what came out of this.
Yeah, it's a pretty good ending. We cried in the theater. We were very, very satisfied with what happened, and fan theories were confirmed. Fan theories were struck down.
Yeah, like we forgot to talk about beforehand, this is a show that spawned many a fan theory. Like, are these people real? Is one of them real and the rest of them fake? Is one of them fake and the rest of them real?
Greendale is purgatory, and I am the devil.
What?
I knew it.
Stop letting him make you realize stuff.
And through it all, we now have the answers. And if you don't like the answers, I'm sorry, but this is just the way it is. This isn't one of those things where they're like, we're gonna leave it open. Nope, we have a definitive answer. You have to kind of go along with it. And if you really, really just were happy with whatever answers you got, you're gonna be happy.
Really, I thought it was really good just on the merits of they put the work in and they did stuff that I didn't see coming, but they also did do it in the best possible way to make it work the way it did.
Characterization is as on point as it can be. The characters are fun. It's a typical Amazing Digital Circus experience because it can go from funny to horrifying to existentially devastating in ways that you probably weren't thinking that this was entirely capable of, because it's like, yeah, this is a show that really talks to a certain mindset of people, but it very much is a story where you can tell that the people creating it really knew who they were speaking to on a personal level.
The one thing I will say is that if you know about this, but there's a reason why the last poster they released for this was a send-up of Evangelion.
And the fact that this is kind of a big, trippy movie that's just like, let's end this in a way that's weird and just artistic in ways that you could not imagine, that an AI could not imagine, just kind of makes sense. And really, the biggest satisfying thing is the fact that this is a big part of YouTube coming back into the main space of mainstream cinema. There was a time way back in the early 2010s where YouTubers were a big deal, to the point that studios would be like, let's make this into a movie. And some of them were better than others. Others were just essentially what a studio would think that a movie version of XYZ would be.
Yeah, that's why we got Nigahiga made a movie, and Smosh made a movie, and Shane Dawson made a movie.
And the Angry Video Game Nerd made a movie. And for a while, that kind of made Hollywood look at YouTubers, at least YouTubers that would be like character-based, and think, yeah, maybe they're better off in like 3-minute chunks like they were on YouTube. But now, between Shelby Oaks with Chris Stuckman and Kane Parsons with the current #1 movie in America of Backrooms, and Markiplier with Iron Lung, it feels like the world is opening up to YouTubers jumping into cinema.
Especially since this one is already projected to do some pretty good numbers in the box office, which could very well lead to maybe someday down the road Glitch could put out an actual made-for-theaters movie.
But the important thing is that events like this, it's fun to see people who are passionate about this appear. It's interesting to watch this come to life on a big screen. Obviously, there were a lot of things that just kind of felt big and cinematic, probably because by the time they were making this, they had already pitched, hey, let's make a big movie version of this to cap it off, and eventually, hey, let's release this in theaters so that everyone can see it on the biggest screen possible. And yeah, there's a lot we could say, but we have to be vague about it. Like, there is a song, a real, honest to God, we actually paid to license song that I don't know if it's going to end up on the YouTube upload,
Yeah, it's possible they could have only licensed it for the theatrical release, but
When it started playing, I was shocked. Like, wait, did you shell out real money for this? Like,
and it's not even like it's a song that's cheaper, that you would probably think is cheap or anything. It's a pretty well-known song, which I imagine costs a lot of money.
so when that suddenly showed up, it's like, oh, wow, okay, we're really stretching the budget here. And even with the idea of stretching the budget, it's like, okay, we've still got the same standard animation. It's not exactly cinema quality, but it doesn't have to be, because the setting of the show is supposed to be like a virtual reality 90s era computer game. So if something looks a little bit too artificial, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't even matter then, because it still looks amazing. There's little details, like the fact that Ragatha's mouth is designed to move like a stop motion mouth on a character.
We get little details that we don't normally see on the YouTube upload because we're not seeing it on a giant screen.
Textures are more pronounced and everything like that. The audio mix is super loud, so if you were really hoping to hear every little detail, then you got it.
All in all, it's really stretching what they could do with this movie. Again, it's still not movie quality where you would expect this to be a theatrical film, but it still doesn't really matter, because this is supposed to be like sort of low bit animated CG characters.
And yeah, I'm really satisfied with where this is. It ends on a pretty good note. I wouldn't go ahead and call this like a perfect finale, but it's a satisfying finale.
Yeah.
And so I say that it fits into the echelons of series finales that actually seem to fit. It's as far away from the likes of the Castle series finale as you could possibly get, mostly because they actually knew that they were going to end.
Instead of just stapling on some bullshit at the end.
So, at the risk of getting too deep, spoiling a really, really, really hard not to spoil ending without talking about every little detail, we can't even talk about which characters that this episode unexpectedly kind of focuses on more than you'd expect.
But the cast is giving it their all. These actors are amazing.
These actors have very much locked in who these characters are by this point, even though they've had significantly less time than someone who's working on a television animated series would be working with. But the characters are great. Gooseworks did a fantastic job writing and directing everything. I truly hope that she gets to do something to this scale again very soon. Or if she would prefer to just go back to YouTube animations, that's fine with me too. Whatever she wants to do. Especially considering all the controversies that have been going on in the last couple of weeks.
All we can say is, Gooseworks, we appreciate your work. And if you ever do consider doing a project like this again, consider us seated.
But in the end, that's it for right now. The Amazing Digital Circus, The Last Act. If you can see it in the theaters, which you probably won't be able to by the time this video is ready to go, well, then go ahead and see it. If not, go ahead and wait until the YouTube upload. But for right now, I think it's a pretty satisfying way to cap off this pretty good YouTube series that might just be a big stepping stone for things to come in the future. So be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, leave in the comments what you may or may not have thought of The Amazing Digital Circus, The Last Act. No spoilers, please, please. And don't forget to tune in next time when... What? Bye.
Bye.
Why would you do this?
It's called a manic episode, and you're getting 3 more seasons.